I almost quit the insurance industry altogether. But when I reset, what I really reset more than anything else is my mindset. And I got back to what made me so good in sports back in the day, which was, what are you doing off the field when nobody's watching? And I think I apply that to how we coach our clients today. There is no secret bullet to sales
Yep.
except putting in the consistent work every day.
Welcome to Benefits Broker Boost, the show that gives employee benefits brokers practical strategies to grow, scale, and streamline their business. Presented by Plansight, where innovation meets efficiency in employee benefits. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. I'm joined today by a man that needs no introduction in the insurance space. If you're in the employee benefits space, you've probably seen Andy Neary. You probably know him. Coaches a lot of people on LinkedIn, social selling, building their books of business. Is the owner and founder of Complete Game Consulting, host of Accelerate Your Insurance podcast, insurance sales podcast, and former professional baseball player, multi-time Ironman. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. Adam, you bet. Thank you for letting me be on the show. I know I go back a little bit, worked with Steve a few years ago at Plansight. So just happy to be here. Grateful to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. I'm really excited as well. You know, the purpose of this podcast is that any broker that takes the time out of their day to watch this episode, I want them walking or watch or listen to, however they're consuming the content. I want them to walk away with something that they can do tomorrow to grow their book of business that they maybe haven't thought of yet, or that's a different spin on something that they're trying to do. And so far, I've recorded about 10 episodes and it's been phenomenal. I know this one's going to be just as great based on.
And I'm glad
the
you said
content.
that, Adam, because I think there is a lot of rah-rah theory spoken in the industry that people can apply. So I'm glad you said we need to make this tactical and give people, because I think there needs to be more of that. There's a lot of people who go, I know what I should probably do, the theory I buy into, but how the heck do I actually apply it?
Exactly. And that's what we want. So if someone can walk away and say, great, I'm doing this tomorrow and it's going to help me grow my book of business, that's the goal. And, you know, just a quick intro to Plansight. Plansight sponsors the podcast. You mentioned working with Steve. Plansight accelerates the RFP process, takes all of the manual work out of that, connects to carriers, has AI that reads all the quotes once they come in, puts them side by side, and makes that process really simple. So we're all about making a broker's life and their business more streamlined. And, you know, today we're going to be talking about specifically growing the book of business, but there's other episodes that we'll talk about systems, technology, processes, things that are going to make the business more efficient and effective. But today is all about growing that book of business, which is your forte. So let's jump right in. So I mentioned, you know, former professional baseball player, you pitched for the Milwaukee Brewers organization. And you mentioned, you know, despite being undersized for the pitcher position, right? How did that background shape your mindset going into business and then also going into coaching?
Yeah, it's been my life has probably been a good case study of what it's like to have a impeccable mindset and one that has cost you in many ways. Because to your point, when I look back and I say, okay, what allowed me to play professional baseball as an undersized pitcher? I was 5'9", right? You go look at the average height of a pitcher in the majors right now, it's probably 6'2", 6'3". It was my consistency. It was the work I put in off the field. God didn't give me an arm that threw 97 miles an hour. He did not give me 6'5" height, right? And so I had to have that work ethic off the field that allowed me to have success on it. So I was more smarts than I was natural skill. Now, when I got to pro baseball, Adam, I didn't leverage that the way I should because I was a free agent. I was not a high draft pick. And I think I let that get in my head that I don't quite belong here because I'm not like everybody else. I will say, I think that ultimately cost me in pro baseball. You know, you're recording this from the Salt Lake City area. My last team I played for was just north of you in Ogden with the Ogden Raptors. And so my pro baseball career was probably shorter than it really could have been had I had a better mindset. Fast forward, first 10 years in the insurance industry, probably still dealt with a lot of the same mindset, setbacks, constraints that kept me in a state of mediocrity. But my story, my current story really started in 2014 when we moved to Colorado, because Amy and I used that as an opportunity to reset, restart a little bit. And for me, it was a restart in the industry because I almost quit right before we moved. 2-3 years before we moved, I almost quit the insurance industry altogether. But when I reset, what I really reset more than anything else is my mindset. And I got back to what made me so good in sports back in the day, which was, what are you doing off the field when nobody's watching?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I apply that to how we coach our clients today. There is no secret bullet to sales except putting in the consistent work every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people don't want to hear that because they want to hear the quick overnight win, right? There is none. And if there is, it's not going to last long. And so that's what I would say. How have I applied what allowed me to play pro baseball to the business today? It's teaching people how to show up every day and put in the work nobody else is putting so that they can outlast the competition and create long-term success.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you mentioned, a lot of people look for the silver bullet, right? And there are ways that are smarter of doing things, and you talk about those as well, but they're not I just have to do that thing and then I don't have to work hard anymore, right? You're still gonna have to put the hard work in, even doing the smarter things. So yeah, that's something, the 7 habits of highly effective people, I'm pretty sure that's where this concept, for me at least, hit home, was controlling the controllables, right? What can we control? What's within our sphere of influence, right? And, it sounds like you reset and figured those things out, put a process in place with the things you could control, and then have grown that into a thriving business. So yeah, I love that. Okay. So you actually co-authored a book called Breaking Through the Status Quo, and it explores how companies can innovate rather than just follow tradition. And I've heard you talk about that a lot on social media. If we just take a brand new broker and give them the playbook that a broker that became successful with 20 years ago, they're probably going to burn out, right? So what is the status quo that you're seeing in business or personal branding that you feel like needs to be broken right now?
That's a great question. I actually will tie the book in. So back in, I think it was 2017 when a bunch of us co-authored that book. The analogy I used in the part I wrote in the book was if you're buying health insurance, imagine you're handing out, if you were a bank and you were handing out an unlimited company credit card, would that card come with rules and stipulations? Oh, heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably try to control where you could use the card. It would probably try to create arrangements with certain vendors that would provide discounts. So when your people use that unlimited, that's really, my analogy was, that is a medical ID card today. It is an unlimited company credit card. And if you're not putting any guardrails around that other than deductibles, networks, and out-of-pocket limits, you're never going to control your health insurance costs. And so tie that into, okay, what do we do today? The status quo right now, Adam, is we are trying to raise producers in the insurance industry and help them thrive and scale using strategies that worked for us 30 years ago. We are training people. A challenge I see in the industry today is you have somebody in the industry who grew a book of business 25 to 30 years ago, very successfully. But what they had to use as far as prospecting and marketing channels was very different. But we're still applying those principles to trying to help a producer sell in 2025. And you brought up personal branding. When I got in the business in 2002, it was really take a suspect, hammer them with calls and emails until they submit to an appointment, and then throw a bunch of quotes at them. And if you're competitive, you might win. Today, it's very different. Before you can ever turn a suspect into an appointment, you have to build awareness, brand awareness. And I think that's where we're missing the boat right now is, as executives of agencies and sales leaders, what are you doing to help your producers build brand awareness? And that's really one of the gaps we're trying to fill right now. It's what I had to do when I went into a new market like Colorado. And I think that's the big opportunity right now, is teaching producers, young and old, by the way, unvalidated, to your top producers in your agency. How do you help them build brand awareness? Because they have to build that with prospects today to build credibility.
Yeah. I love that. I actually see, and you see this probably more than me, but I see this little dance with some of the bigger brokerages that they're afraid to let someone build too much of a personal brand because that person might leave. But at the same time, they've got to build a personal brand to even stand out in the market anymore. So we're seeing kind of the tipping point, but it used to be, well, don't do the podcast, don't do your own content, post the content that we put together, and we're starting to see the shift in the industry to, hey, people are buying you as a broker. And sometimes there are still exceptions where they're buying the brokerage because, someone the other day mentioned no one ever got in trouble for choosing IBM back in the day, right? So if you go with one of the big brokers, it's not like it's a safe bet, but people are changing the way that they consume health insurance, and they're changing what they expect from their brokers. So I think we're seeing a good
Well, and I
shift
want to
there.
add to that. I love that you just said that because a peer of mine, Seth Denson, said this to me a few years ago, and it was spot on. He said, "Hey, agencies that understand they're renting the brands of their producers not renting the logo of the agency, are the ones that are going to keep scaling." And he couldn't have been more accurate when he said that, because when you look at most agencies today, Adam, independent all the way up to the top 10, you typically have three types of producers. You've got the unvalidated, you've got validated, and that can be a wide range. And then you've got your top all-stars you can't lose, right? Well, the top all-stars are probably the 20% driving 80% of the revenue. But when you look at them, what ties them all together is time and how they use it. An unvalidated producer has a lot of time on their hands. Go make some activity happen. When you become validated, it's how you manage your time. Use it wisely so you can keep scaling. And then when you scale your books at $1 million or more, you don't have a lot of time anymore. So what are you doing to leverage that to keep scaling your book? And what you just said that I think is important is agencies actually fear somebody getting too big because they could leave. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you ignore their growth, they are going to leave.
Yeah.
And in a matter of 2 years, that great book they built is going to go with them.
Yep. And I'm trying to remember where this saying came from, but it's basically a business owner saying, what if I train my employees and they leave? If I invest in them, put all this money into them and they leave, and then the person on the other side of the conversation says, well, what if you don't and they stay?
Well said.
Yeah. So that's the dance we're kind of seeing, but I'm seeing a lot of shift in the direction of personal branding and them kind of opening that opportunity up for their producers. So, and you teach that a lot, right? That's one of the things that you teach on LinkedIn is, building that personal brand. And you've mentioned several times in posts that I've seen is that prospects are buying you, not necessarily the logo on the business card anymore. When someone's just getting started on LinkedIn, what are the foundations or the foundational elements of building a strong personal brand in a crowded market?
Yeah. We teach 4 principles. The first one is profile. What are you doing? What is your LinkedIn profile doing to look prospect friendly? And what we teach is we want people to view their LinkedIn profile like it's a personal website, because it really is. And just much like building a company website, what are you doing to make your profile inviting and easy for people to do business with you? Second pillar is the connections. Are you proactively making connections with your ideal client profile? And when you do make connections, how are you welcoming them into your community? It's not about selling them right away. You got to welcome into your community. And then the third pillar is the content, where a lot of people focus their efforts on. When it comes to creating content, Adam, I don't think there's any secret sauce other than, do you know who your ideal client profile is or what it is? And are you using your content to speak to that person? That's it. There's one filter you should filter or run all your content through. Would my ideal client find this useful? If the answer is yes, you post it. What I think where our industry is getting stuck is they're spending a little too much time posting for their peers to become industry famous versus actually talking to their ideal client profile. And then the last piece is the pulling them off the platform, which is, are you engaging with these people in their DMs, their inboxes on LinkedIn to actually try to turn the connection into a sales conversation? If you do those 4 things consistently, you're going to generate activity.
Yeah. If you've got one takeaway from this, which is what our goal was, let that be it, right? That's those 4 steps. If people can master those, and I see trip ups in each of those steps along the way, but if you can master those and really think through, you mentioned some people try to do it for like social clout, some people try to do it for different reasons, but you've got to think, what does my profile say to my audience? Is my audience seeing my profile? Are they seeing anything that I'm putting out? They're not. Don't just post and hope. You go connect with them, find them, make connection requests. I have personally tested this and I get better results when I don't do a customized message, which you have to pay LinkedIn more for anyway. Just connect. Don't like they'll decide if they want to connect with you or not. And then once you're connected, engage with them. They want the same thing, right? If they are trying to build their professional presence and their career, they want engagement on their posts as well. Engage thoughtfully. Don't engage just to engage, but engage thoughtfully with their posts, and then craft your posts to make more sense to them. And then, like you said, don't just like cross your fingers. Hopefully they reach out and know I'm a broker and they're like, hey, do you want to give me a quote this year? Like you've got to take it off the platform.
Well, and two real life examples of that, Adam. One, yeah, you can't get caught up in the metrics of likes and comments. And I know people will disagree with me on this, but I'll push back. If you're trying to drive business on LinkedIn, you can't get caught up in the metrics, because here's what happens. Personal posts are always going to beat business posts. This is how the algorithm works. So what I see is people make that one personal post and they get all the love. And then they kind of get addicted to that dopamine. And so they keep going back to that, and it's doing nothing to drive their business. And two examples I can share. We have a producer in one of our membership groups, 25 years old, so young, new to the industry. He's been consistently putting out the content. He had a prospecting meeting just a few weeks ago, and he thought he was meeting with the HR director, and the president shows up. And the president said, hey, I came in, I wanted to start the meeting, come in, because I noticed you sent me a LinkedIn invite. I know I haven't accepted it. I will. He said, but I have been seeing your content. I really like it. And that's why I'm in this meeting. I want to know how you can help us. Never once liked or commented on anything. Hasn't even accepted his invite. They're watching. And then the next example is, I was doing a workshop with a client yesterday, and we were talking with the team about how do you use LinkedIn effectively in the sales process. And what a lot of their producers are doing is when they meet with a client or prospect for the first time, as part of their process, they're making sure that they are connecting with that team on LinkedIn, because as they move them through their sales process, they want them seeing their content, because that content could be the thing that builds the credibility to ultimately get the win. And they notice, they're like, hey, we noticed the people we met with are liking our content. I said, that means they're watching. And so, yeah, that's, to me, if you're going to use LinkedIn for its purpose, which is a business-to-business platform, those are the things you have to be focusing on.
I agree. And, I always tell people, use metrics on LinkedIn as a benchmark, but not as like the success measure, because I actually was interviewing a guy, I think he's actually taken one of your courses. His name is Matt Richards. Matt Richard. And he mentioned, sometimes I won't get any engagement, but I'll go to a conference and they'll be like, "Oh, you're the whiteboard guy," or this is
Yep.
this is you. And so there are people watching that are not engaging. So impressions are a good benchmark. Is my audience seeing it? Am I putting something together? Am I interacting well enough that they're seeing my content? And then if they're engaging, even better, right? But you've got to keep educating with that content, and ultimately it will turn into business. I've been in marketing my whole career, and there's the rule of 7 in marketing, right? Where on average, someone will have interacted with your brand at least 7 times before they decide to transact with your brand. And if you're your brand, you got to be there, right? You got to be putting the content out regularly. They've got to see it. You've got to put something that's interesting to them. So yeah.
Another way to look at that is, think of yourself like the news.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to build credibility with ideal prospects, you need to show up every day, whether you have news or not. The Channel 6 doesn't say, hey guys, we don't have any news today, so we're just going to cancel the 5 o'clock show.
Yeah.
They show up with some form of news that they think is informational, right? You gotta view yourself the same way. Show up, post stuff you think they'll find useful, and if you do it long enough, they're going to start paying attention.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Okay. So we talked about, I introduced your podcast early on, but your podcast, Accelerate Your Insurance Sales, which I stumbled over at the beginning. That's the name of the podcast, addresses topics like how introverts can dominate sales, using AI to scale your sales. What are the topics or what shift in the industry are you seeing that you're most excited about over the next few years?
Yeah, I would tell you, first and foremost, let's go with the obvious, AI. A lot of the workshops we're doing right now with our clients, AI is a component of the conversation. Because when you look at a sales process, for example, I heard a keynote speaker used this to talk about AI about a year ago, and he said, the purpose of AI is to automate the mundane so you can focus on the meaningful. And when I look at like, okay, how does a producer or team leverage that in their agency? Well, your meaningful time is being in front of clients and prospects. So what are you doing behind the scenes that used to take a lot of time that you can automate now in minutes with AI? For example, putting together a proposal, right? This workshop we did yesterday, we literally walked the team through how to control the discovery meeting and how to gather the right information, and then how to collect the information they're going to need to come back with a proposal and a strategy. But once you have all that information, we used to sit down and take 2 to 3 hours at them to get prepared for the proposal. Now you can plug all that into AI and get in a world-class presentation in 10 minutes. So it's the things like that that used to take a long time, we need to be automating so you can spend more time in front of your clients and prospects, which is the whole point. So AI is definitely a big one. I would say, one thing I see right now with agencies of all sizes, but especially the bigger ones, going back to what I mentioned earlier, where you have producers at 3 levels, 3 stages. You get unvalidated, validated, and then the all-stars. A lot of agencies spend a ton of time with training the unvalidated, which makes a lot of sense. Problem is, as they do that, they're starting to ignore their top producers because, well, they got it all figured out. They don't need our help. Yeah, but they're looking for it. And there's different ways you can support them to help them keep scaling. But if you don't, your top performers are the ones who may say, well, I'm just going to go start my own agency, or worse yet, I'm going to go to the competition. And you lose a top performer. As I said earlier, their book's going with them in the next 2 years. So I'd say the other big shift is I'm having a lot of conversations right now with sales leaders saying, what can we do to support our top performers more?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I actually hadn't seen that that shift. Definitely have seen the AI shift. We are a company that does that, right? We automate the mundane parts of your RFP process, your presentation building, all of that. But I totally agree with you on that piece of things. Technology in this space is gaining a lot of momentum where a lot of it used to be manual. It's producers are realizing that when they've got technology behind the scenes, they can deliver faster, right? They can be the first one to bring the quotes in for their clients, but it's not replacing people. I always tell people, you're going to have to figure out what to do with your time. Our goal is not to cut your team down. Our goal is to free your team up to be more effective. And whether that's now you have more time to go and build this personal brand, that's great, right? That's going to add to top line revenue. But it's taking that mundane layer out and making that the time that you get to spend face to face easier and more impactful. So I love that you articulated that.
Well, and I agree. I love that you said that. I'm reading a book right now called The AI Driven Leader. And I would say the main point in that book is AI should not be the thought leader. It's the thought partner. And I think a lot of people today are trying to use it as a thought leader, right? Go create a social media post, go write this email. You need to treat it like it's a thought partner. You're still the thought leader, but interact with AI in a way where it can be that partner, that mentor you're looking for to interview you and guide you and have a dialogue with, that can ultimately create the result you're trying to create. And you talk about technology. One of the big shifts we're going through right now, Adam, it's been kind of interesting as that we start to build out more automations and things in our products. I'm like, man, we're starting to look more like a SaaS company in many ways than we are a coaching consulting company. I mean, I think there's a lot of companies going through that right now. And so you have agencies who have all this technology, but it's a waste of money if nobody's using it, right? How many producers fail to use the sales CRM like they should? I think AI is going to be the same way. It's here. It's not going away, but you got to use it. Are you using it the right way effectively so it's a good use of your time and investment?
Yeah. And I think the tricky part of that is cutting through all of the noise around AI, right? Everyone wants you to believe that they've got a all-in-one solution that's created by AI that you just don't have to work anymore, right? It's the silver bullet. Believe me, I've been in tech companies for the last decade. It doesn't exist. They try and they retreat, and they try and they retreat. And we've seen massive layoffs because AI was going to handle whole aspects of a business. and then rehiring of the people. Oh, actually, it didn't quite do as well as we thought.
Here's a great example, Adam. I love you said this. So, what I'm telling our clients right now is the best time to use AI is when you get stuck. And in the past, we used to, when we got stuck, we would say, who can help me with this? Now should be, what can AI do to help me with? And I'll give you a real Monday morning. So we're recording this on a Friday. This Monday, I woke up and I had to record my solo podcast episode for the week. Adam, I woke up and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm talking about today. I went to AI Monday morning, went to chat, and I started a dialogue. And I said, hey, I got to record a podcast. I'm stuck. I'm not sure what I could talk about. I said, well, can you go research my LinkedIn profile, our website, my content, and interview me and just start getting thoughts out of my head? And it did. And we landed on a damn good episode. And I made my preview post I always make Monday morning. The feedback was phenomenal. I'm excited to see what the returns are with it going live today. But that morning, I had no clue what I was going to talk about. I was stuck, but I went to AI and I started a dialogue and created a great result. That's what I'm talking about when we say thought part.
Yeah, exactly. I've used it in very similar ways. I've had writers on my team. I write occasionally, but I usually have writers on my teams, and I will tell them AI is the ultimate solution for writer's block.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like you kind of used it as like a mental writer's block. You weren't writing, but you were conceptualizing what you were going to go through, and you just used it to kind of unlock that and help get the creative juices going. So yeah, really great feedback there. Okay. So you moved from athletics into the insurance and consulting world, right? That is a big transition, but it's also one that's pretty common in the insurance space. We see it a lot. Collegiate athletes, professional athletes moving into the insurance space. What was the hardest part of that pivot for you, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I think any athlete listening in will probably resonate with what I'm about to say. When you play a sport at a high level, college, then maybe even the opportunity to play professionally, it is very easy to let that sport define who you are. And when you wake up the next day and it's no longer who you are, that can be a hard thing to overcome. You know, I had that happen in baseball. Still remember the morning I went into the spring training facility in Arizona and I saw the pink slip in my locker. And that was my last day in pro baseball, right? I could have probably continued to try to pursue independent ball, maybe come back to another team, but I didn't. I said, I got my degree. I'm going to move on. That next day, I'm no longer a professional baseball player. And I think I struggled with that for a while. Because I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I got in the industry like most people because somebody suggested it, right? And that's probably why for the first good 5 to 10 years of my insurance career, I struggled. I was very mediocre. And it wasn't until I kind of realized that if I just apply the same habits, rituals, and mindset that took me to pro baseball, but I apply it to business, I could have equal success. I'll give you a real example. There were so many times in my past, Adam, where I'd be stuck in business, sales weren't going well, I wasn't hitting my numbers, and I would always think back to like, how could I be so calm with a guy on second and one out and get out of that jam and be so confident on the mound, and I have zero confidence right now. That was a recurring thought I always had. And then finally it hit and I realized, wait, it's the habits and the things I'm doing off the field that made me so confident on the mound. And when I started applying that approach to business, in this case insurance, that's when my success started to take off.
Yeah, that's super interesting, actually. You know, I think those of us that haven't done sports on that level, we underestimate how much time and habit has been formed around that sport, right? You didn't just start in high school, you played your entire life probably. And you've got these daily habits that make you successful there, and you've got to basically reform a full new set of habits when you're done. They translate, but someone might have to help you translate those, right? It's funny, we use the metaphor getting more at bats, right? It's a pretty common metaphor, but it really is, and that's what made you calm on the mound. But you got to get the same at bats in the business that you're in to feel comfortable and confident like you did when you were actually on the mound. So Yeah,
Well, and here's some good advice for any producer who may be stuck in a little bit of mediocrity right now. I look back at when was I most successful in baseball and when was I not? And when was I most successful in insurance and when was I not? And I can tell you here's a couple common ties. I was most successful in baseball when I did it my own way. Call it my brand, right? How did I work out in the gym? What were my routines? What were my habits? It was my way. I made my own. When I wasn't successful, AKA getting the pro ball, I actually got away from that and I was looking at what others were doing and I tried to mimic them. Fast forward to insurance. When was I at my worst? When I was trying to copy what others were doing and not being myself. And when I realized, no, I need to build my own brand and do it the way I know how to do it, that's when everything changed. So for somebody out there right now tuning in saying, I'm just going to go copy what this guy's doing because he's having success, I'm going to tell you that will not lead to success. You have to design a strategy that fits who you are and fits what your brand is all about.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it also kind of echoes what you mentioned earlier, where we're trying to take new producers and put them into a 25-year veterans playbook. And, I think a lot of that might come from the mentor-mentee relationship where it's like, you're where I want to be, but you forget that they got there 20 years ago when all of the avenues for new business were different. And so you start looking around at who's successful when I'm hungry, I'm in a new position. I'm always looking around. Okay, what are people doing that are succeeding? But I'm also like stubborn enough to know that I need to think differently about it for myself, because a lot of things that people do just based on the way that my brain works is not going to work for me. So yeah, take what they're doing that's really successful, take what other people are doing that's really successful, but make it your own. So
Bingo.
I love that. And it kind of goes into this next question. In the world of insurance, you and I are connected with a lot of brokers on social media, and there's a lot of like noise and sameness, right? Like there's posting the new post that their company came up with, and you see it on 17 different brokers, LinkedIn's, right? There's a lot of sameness. How do you help your clients differentiate and stand out authentically, right? You talked about doing it your way. How do you help them craft that?
Yeah, I think that is right. You kind of answered the question at the same time, which is my belief with social media, especially content, is you just have to leverage your brand. And I say that because to your point, if you're an agency that says our producers all have to post the same stuff, just post the company content, you're not letting them build any kind of brand awareness. At the same time, if you're just trying to mimic what somebody else is doing, meaning like post this way because the algorithm likes it, again, you're not representing your brand. And I hear it all the time. We have clients that are absolutely killing it with social media content, Adam, but their own teammates say, I can't do what he or she does. You don't have to. Make it yours. And so I would tell anybody out there, what do I think we do well with content? It's how do we teach our clients to put out their actual authentic brand consistent and not try to mimic what someone else is doing and get away from their brand. Now, does that create overnight wins? It does not. And I'll tell, the other thing, if you don't mind me just sharing, we have a program where we do content for people and both teams and producers. And one of the things we're being challenged with is like, Andy, we love the content, but it's not generating leads. And it's like, okay, well, let's have a conversation. Because number one, content's purpose is not to generate leads. You still have to make connections and send the DMs and engage with people. And we're working on that right now to create a whole ecosystem. But the point is, if you want to use a platform like social media effectively, just know the content alone won't create the magic.
Mm-hmm.
Put out your brand authentically, but then you still have to engage with your connections and community if you want to actually turn those into conversations.
Yeah, that's great advice. You're the second person that works in a similar space that's mentioned. If you don't make the engagement and take it off platform, you're missing
Correct.
almost all of the leads. If you're waiting for someone to say, "Hey, I think I want you to come quote my benefits for me this year," it's probably not going to happen.
Well, and it's the number one, like I said, it's the number one. It's funny. It's probably the number one complaint we get from the clients we do content for is, but it hasn't generated any leads. And I'm like, you haven't spent a minute on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it is, you have to commit to connecting and communicating with people and turning that engagement into something offline.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. We've talked about a lot of success. I want to talk failures and setbacks, right? Because we all run into them, right? You've talked about a little bit of yours, in your early career, but in your athletic career or in your coaching career, let's talk about a failure that turned into a really meaningful lesson for you. And what did that teach you about resilience?
Yeah. So coaching, I've got a clear one. September 2020. And I don't think you need to be a historian to know what was going on in 2020. I had just a few clients on the coaching. It was still a side hustle at that point. I was still selling insurance. In late September, I had one of my clients that I was coaching tell me that they're going to let me go due to some external circumstances, which caused me to lose multiple clients because actually through that client, I had multiple clients. And I got to a point where I only had a handful. I think in one hand, I could count how many coaching clients I had left. And I had a couple others, unfortunately, leave too at the time. And I hit a point in late September 2020 where I said, maybe this coaching thing isn't for me. Maybe I should just go back to selling insurance and focus on that. And I remember that night I went to bed, woke up, and the next morning I made a decision that at the time was scary as hell, man. I made 3 decisions, I should say. Number 1, I made the decision that not only am I not giving up on this, come January 1st, I'm actually getting rid of my book and I'm going all in on this. Which, by the way, at the time, the book was my major source of revenue. I invested in a business coach, my own coach, to help me grow. And then I joined a mastermind that was being run by a guy that I had been following online to help entrepreneurs grow their business. That in those 3 investments, by the way, or those 2 of the 3 were not, I didn't have the money at the time. I was like, I'm going to have to put this on a credit card. Not easy. Holy cow, I hope this works, right? But what I realized in that moment, Adam, is when I made that commitment to go all in on this business and go all in on me, everything started to shift. I would be honest if I weren't saying, I'd be lying if I weren't saying up at that point, I was running a coaching business, half pregnant, hobby. But when I said, no, this is going to be my thing. I'm going all in. And I threw that out to the universe. It was as if the universe said, got it. Now you're playing for keeps. And then everything started shifting. And I'd give that advice to anybody right now. If you're not happy with where you're at, the first thing you need to ask yourself is not what can my boss do for me or where can my team support me? It's what are you doing to go all in on yourself, or are you playing half pregnant? The moment you go all in and commit to what you're trying to achieve in business, things will change.
Yeah. I have one mentor that was a professional skier, skied in the Olympics and did a lot of like backcountry skiing that I wouldn't even imagine, heli skiing, all of that. And, he talks about the point of being all in, right? Where you point your ski tips down the mountain and you're going, right? Like I mentioned, we're about 10 episodes recorded and we've got quite a few more. And I've had, precincts with a lot of these people, so many of them right before the real growth in their career, they can pinpoint kind of a back against the wall moment where it's like, here we go. We're going to be all in. Right. And so I love that you can pinpoint that in your career and you made that decision, which I'm sure was difficult after, having a book of business for as long as you did. But it's turned out great for you, right? It's been a really great career in the last, 5 years since you made that decision to go all in on it. So really, really great advice, and a good thing to learn from that failure, that setback is, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to be all in on. Okay. So I want to ask two more questions. The first one is, if you could, looking back on your career, we'll have people watching this that are pretty early on in their career, all the way through people that are already really good producers. But if you could give yourself one piece of advice starting out in this industry, trying to break into this business, what would it be and why?
Well, I'll make it a 2-part answer here. I'd say personal development and accountability. Invest in yourself. Don't expect anybody else to do it for you. Go all in on your own professional development and personal development. Improve your skills, improve your mind. But the other part of that is the accountability. Own your results. At the end of the day, whether you win or lose, it's on you. Don't point fingers somewhere else, point the thumb at yourself. And I think those 2 things, they correlate with our move to Colorado that I mentioned, Adam, is I went all in on personal professional development. And I also realized if I'm going to win or lose out here, it's on me. Nobody else is going to do it for me. And so that would be the advice. I wish I knew that at 23. Invest in yourself, invest in your own growth, and own the results you create, good or bad.
I love that. I think that is the key to success in any industry, right? We talked about this a little bit, but we both have hobbies in health and longevity and keeping ourselves as healthy as possible. I found that when I started investing in myself that way, which was pretty early on, it caused me to think differently about myself, right? It's almost this constant reassurance that, hey, I personally believe that I'm worth this investment that I'm making in myself. I know I can do this. And it makes you think differently about that. So invest in yourself always. And then that accountability, I have an accountability group of a few friends that I know anytime I make a physical goal, a mental goal, and I put it out in front of them, not only will they be like, okay, we're your accountability group, but there will be one or two of them that are like, let's go. Like I'm in too. So yeah, really, really great advice. And like I said, the advice that pretty much success in almost any industry will boil down to. Okay, last question. And this one is, you've been in the space for a long time. You meet with so many brokers. You see kind of the whole landscape in what you do. I'm really curious, what is getting you most excited about being in the insurance space in 2025, almost 2026? Can't believe that, but yeah, end of 2025, going into 2026, what has you most excited about being in the employee benefits space?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd even say commercial because we do commercial insurance too.
Yeah.
But what gets me excited right now, Adam, we are blessed that we get to work with some of the most driven people I've ever met. And when I look at what separates the top producers from everybody else, it's that drive. It's the things you can't teach, right? It's the consistency. It's the ability to wake up every day and do the same mundane, boring things day after day, even though that doesn't feel like you're getting results today. It's going to create a result tomorrow. But when I look at what gets me excited is we're starting to see agencies of all sizes, even in the top 15 in the country, realize that yeah, we got to change the way we train our producers.
Hmm.
It is they're having a harder time getting at bats, and we have to change the way we help them go get that attention to get those at bats. And so brand awareness to me has become, something that is becoming more the norm, which I love because that's what we do. And we've got firms all the way up to the biggest in the world realizing that. And so yeah, man, I'd say that that's just the evolution of how we prospect today. Little did I know when I started in my journey 2014 to 2019 to try to create personal brand and brand awareness, little did I know I'd be sitting here 10 years later teaching others how to do it and some of the biggest organizations in the industry. But it's people now, everybody's starting to recognize, yeah, we need to evolve our training a little bit. So that's what really gets me excited going into 2026.
I love it. I love it. I've seen the same thing, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. We're seeing a shift from the, hey, don't get on here and talk about personal stuff, talk about business stuff, or give advice. And we're starting to see a pretty big shift away from that to where they know that producers need their own personal brand. So okay, well, I'm also excited for that. But I want to thank you for being on today. This has been really, really valuable. If someone isn't walking away with something they can do tomorrow, they weren't listening well enough. There's a lot of value in this podcast episode. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
If someone wants to connect with you, Andy, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
One, LinkedIn, connect with me, Andy Neary, CEO of Complete Game Consulting. Our website is completegameconsulting.com, or come check out the Accelerate Your Insurance Sales podcast.
Awesome. I'll link both of those in the show notes. So if you're watching or if you're on any of the podcast platforms, you should be able to find it there. But thanks again for your time. Thank you for watching Benefits Broker Boost, and we'll see you next time.